call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. on August 13th, 2019. This agenda is subject to change and includes those items reasonably anticipated by the chair to be discussed at the meeting. Not all agenda items may be in fact discussed, and other items not listed may be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. And is anybody here recording? You're not recording it? Okay. All right. We do not have any citizens' participation. So Jim, if you want to come up, if you want to actually grab a chair and...
You have that, or?
Yeah, you can come up and sit with us. We can turn some mics, so...
There you go.
Thank you.
You good, Miles? Can you hear me?
Well, we can hear.
Oh, he'll tell you, right?
Good to see you.
Do we... Awesome.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
So we wanted to have you come and just meet with us. We were aware of the, I guess I'll call it an air quality report
Sure.
at the Ward School.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to go over the report and get an update from you, how things are going before school starts.
Great. I just want to give you, this is kind of loud, Miles back there. Just give you an overview and background of the letter I wrote back in June, which is probably what you're referring to, and it shows there's a link on the website as well to the actual reports that were developed by not only our outside agency, but also the MTA. And I think what's important is the MTA, which is the Massachusetts Teachers Association, it's the union of all teachers, not all, there's another union as well, but the MTA is where our faculty and staff belong to. And they've hired an individual to go out to many districts. It's one of their initiatives as an organization to look at air quality in buildings, and especially older buildings across the Commonwealth. And so they came out in January, February. There's always concern when you have older buildings to find out what the air quality looks like. So they sent someone out, performed some testing. We did some absolute testing from our side as well. Universal Environmentalists over in Framingham came in, did some air quality testing. And so in summary, quickly, what I wrote in the letter was there was nothing of major concern within the Warren School. Specifically, that's what we're talking about in the letter and the testing that was done. And there were recommendations that were made in terms of looking at the air quality, the flow of air, potential mold in the buildings. We've been in the process of removing carpet in some of our rooms, which years ago they had obviously asbestos tiles underneath the carpets. And so making sure that whatever we were doing, we were following, all the proper guidelines, et cetera. So in conversation with the union, the teachers union here in Ashland, we set up a little safety committee at the Warren School with teachers and union members, representatives there, working with Barbara Durand, our assistant superintendent of finance and operations, as well as Joe Richardson, the town and school director of facilities. So it's been a really collaborative effort to make sure that anything of concern that has been brought up by teachers and in the community is that they're being addressed. So I think I'd like to share some things that we've done this summer. I think it's really important because we take the health and well-being of our students and our faculty and our staff and our community who are in our buildings constantly. The Warren School is used at night with Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and various activities and groups, and EDP, which is our extended day program. So we want to make sure, obviously, our facilities are in good shape and any concerns are taken seriously. So once we both did air quality testing, we did, like I said, we came up with some recommendations that we wanted to take care of over the summer. And what we've done is, as I mentioned, we had one room, room 25, that's what we call it, room 25, which was a kindergarten room. Just last week, we actually had the carpet removed and had the state come out who they look at the air quality in the room as well as the flooring, and making sure that any asbestos, so it's all cleaned, shut off, and they come in and do the air testing there and making sure that we've removed any asbestos that was in there before we lay down any new tile. So that was just done this week. Actually, I was up there this afternoon, and the tile's in, looks great. our process is trying to get all of our rooms that had carpet in there removed. We just find that, certainly the building doesn't have air conditioning. So when it's hot and humid and we were using, cleaners for the carpets and rugs, sometimes the heat and humidity, you can't get it to dry as quickly as you'd like, even over a vacation period. So we're in the process of removing all of the rooms with carpets. It's labor intensive, it's time consuming, especially if you've ever been into an elementary school classroom, which I'm sure we all have, there's a lot of stuff. And it's unlike a high school classroom where, kids tend to bring their books and everything in. Elementary schools have loads of books and ancillary materials in there. So it takes a while. So we've got a couple more rooms that'll be taken care of over the December break, as well as on some weekends and things of that nature. But we want to be very careful. If we're pulling up carpets that potentially could have asbestos tiles below, we've got to make sure there's no one in the building, and we want to make sure it's safe for our workers as well. And so that's why teachers are like, why can't we do them? We've got to be careful. We've got to take our time. So that was just done.
Is the reason this report, is that why you're pulling?
No, that was a part of the process to begin
part
with.
of it.
So
Okay.
asbestos abatement, if you go back and look over the past 7-8 years, even on the capital plan for the town, we've got buildings that it's sealed, right? The asbestos, we've done everything by law. We're following all the proper protocols. But again, our best, practices, we'd like to remove it. And but it takes time. So we do have funding from the Springtown meeting to go ahead and remove more of them and put in tiling, new tile over the, removing the carpet. So, and it's just easier to clean, right? Overall, it's just easier to clean.
So are you pulling up the carpet, but there's asbestos tiles under it?
So what happens is, so in this room, I can give an example.
Yeah.
In this one room, we wanted to make sure if there's asbestos tiles underneath.
Yeah.
And so if you're pulling up carpet, sometimes if you're pulling up a tile and now you've exposed the asbestos, now we've got to worry about the air quality, we've got to worry about remediation, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we do one room at a time, take our time with it, and then have the state come in and verify that the room is clean or is able to be prepared to put new tile down. So that's what we've done.
Okay.
And again, one room at a time. It's hard, you can't.
You're covering the asbestos tile on top of it, or?
No, they've been removed.
Oh, they're
The
removed.
tiles have been removed, and then it's the blank slate, if you will, and they lay new tile down that's not asbestos tiling. Right. So, but if you have asbestos tiles, which we do, one of the, and Joe could give you a more in-depth, practice of what we do, but there's a glue that you're sticking down that covers any potential cracks that exist. So it's covered up, and so we have the state come in and review our practice and to make sure that we're covering the tiles appropriately, just in case if the crack exists, or without having to remove the asbestos tile itself.
And Jim, just for clarification, Joe being Joe
Yeah,
Richardson.
okay.
Your facilities director.
Fair enough, thank you. Yep, no, I apologize, Mark. It's
That's
just so
okay.
easy for me to just say Joe.
I know who Joe is.
Yeah.
I know
So
who he
he's
is.
the director of facilities for the town as well as the public schools. So, and another thing we talked about was making sure that what they call a deep clean in the facilities. So we've had classrooms that, by a deep clean, it's really taking everything out of the classroom and not just doing the floors, but really wiping down the walls, the windows, cleaning out the vents, and going through and making sure that everything has been sanitized. And so we identified 9 rooms that needed to be, and working with our union, saying these 9 rooms and need to be really clean. So we hired an outside agency, service master, to come in and do what we call a deep clean. And what that really means is, and I'll give you an example. So classrooms were sealed with 6mm poly and HEPA air scrubbers were installed to aid in filtering the air that's in there. Classrooms with ceiling tiles were cleaned using HEPA vacuums. Classrooms with hard ceiling surfaces were hand washed with proper material. All walls, hard furnishings, and cabinets were also hand washed. All carpets were shampooed using All Clean, and all floors were mopped and cleaned using SaniMaster. So using very best practices, but it's difficult for our staff because we have limited staff to come in and do that on a regular basis. So what we're trying to figure out is implementing a plan, whether it's a monthly or a quarterly plan, to get the rooms that have not been identified, but also to do this kind of work in there. It's quite expensive.
How many total rooms do you have there?
How many? Probably 40, I think 43, 44. We just are adding 2 modulars this
Right.
week as well.
Yep.
Has this, it would seem to me
Yeah.
that every single classroom, like 4 times a year, should be scrubbed down.
Well, right. So here's the
Is this
here's
new?
the catch. It's not that it's new. It's the process takes a couple hours a classroom.
Yeah,
And when you have 3 custodians
yeah.
to do that and to do the rest of the maintenance of the building
Right.
at night when it's still being used, making sure that the rooms. So at night, a custodian may get in there and be able to clean the floors, wipe down a chalkboard, no chalkboards anymore, rarely, right? Whiteboards, and then get to the next room and clean the hallways. It's very difficult to say you're going to spend 2 hours here when your shift is about 7 hours long.
Yeah.
But we're trying to figure out a process that will still allow for that to occur, whether it's hiring and doing more overtime for our staff so they can come in and do those, that deeper cleaning. Absolutely, especially with youngsters, right? We know that. But also part of if you're looking at the part of the report talks a lot about the responsibility of our teachers too in the classroom. We have a ton of stuff that's being brought in from outside by teachers. And the vents, it's hard to explain in here, but so let's just assume there's a vent on the floor next to the windows that's about this wide. Those vents have been covered by materials over the years by staff, thus impacting air quality and airflow. So one of the things we've done is we've asked our teachers, in a memo just recently from Ms. Duran, Barbara Duran, our assistant superintendent, is we've got to keep those clear. We just cleaned them all out. That was part of the process this summer. We've cleaned them. We've ensured the facilities department's been going in and checking to ensure that they're working properly and cleaning the filters. And so part of it, the responsibility is don't put stuff on the vents. Don't impede the air quality that's flowing through. So that's sort of been the process. We have the ventilation system isn't working at its best because we're impeding and have impeded the flow itself. And that was recommended by the MTA gentleman as well, saying, hey, you've got to have this conversation with your teaching staff as well to keep things moving. But that leads to also the air quality that's coming from the outside, where we have 2 courtyards at the Warren School, and they were overgrown. And I didn't even notice until we had it actually removed. All the stuff in the courtyards removed, all the overgrown weeds and trees, and there were vents on the outside of the courtyard going into the rooms that were clearly being impacted in terms of, and obviously the wet fall and the spring, and we had moisture that probably was getting into the rooms. So we had that all cut down. We had a company come in from the outside, cleaned it all up. So now our facilities is actually cleaning it, keeping it mowed down, weed whacking. They did it twice this summer. They're going to go back in a week and do it again. So now those vents on the outside are actually helping that airflow as well. I think what happens is over time, we have a tendency not to have put things in priority, right? I mean, it's not that we weren't thinking about health and well-being of our faculty, our staff, and our students. It was, where are we going to put our money? And are we putting our money into, and it was short-sighted. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, I've been here, it's my 6th year as superintendent, 11 year in the district, and these are things that are just coming to my attention now from teachers like, hey, Jim, this never occurred. Okay, great, so let's deal with it. And it's, I think we have such a good relationship that we're able to identify areas, and we still need more staff. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, I remember Kevin Johnson 11 years ago did a report for the school committee, and I was just a lonely high school principal back then. And we had a brand new building, right? You know, some still call it the new high school, but how long's it been? Since 07 now? Yeah, and we're short-staffed in that building because of the square footage in terms of recommended custodial staff for cleaning. We used to have a full-time dedicated painter. We used to have full-time dedicated outside help in terms of mowing the grass. And so we've cut those positions back over time, probably going back to 06, 07 when the recession hit. And I think we're in a position now where we're saying it was short-sighted then, but we weren't thinking about that as deeply as we are today with the health and well-being of people.
So is that being reviewed for?
Yeah, for future, right? So we're looking at, what staff do we need? Or do we have enough staff and allocate overtime? Or do we hire an outside agency like we did in this instance for that deep cleaning of 14 rooms? You know, to really make sure that when those teachers come back, they're really clean and ready to go. And I check the building every single day. I'm in there looking and making sure that, you know, we're on top of it and having dialogue with our staff. So one other piece of this that has come through is, you know, some staff has, you know, certainly talked about air purifiers in their rooms. And we're allowing staff to bring in air purifiers as long as they have, you know, a written maintenance plan. It's all well and good to have a purifier, but if you're not changing the filter, if you're not doing the things that are necessary, then it's really not providing much benefit.
Why do they think that they need an air purifier?
Well, it could be a variety of reasons. But I mean, I don't personally know. I mean, but if they go to a doctor and they feel like, okay, maybe I have some asthmatic symptoms, they're asking, and the doctor might say a purifier would be excellent in your room.
Yeah.
Are they taking, we had that in our campus too. We've had several faculty members do it in their offices, which
Yep.
is easy because offices are pretty small.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking classrooms are pretty big, and I'm wondering if they're even getting units that are big enough to do anything in.
So right, so
In that room size.
so Mr. Richardson certainly working with the staff who, you know, we've probably had 3 requests, maybe 4, of thinking about bringing them in. But we want to make sure, to your point, that they're going to be effective.
Because it's pointless,
Right.
yeah. If you
It's
have one
pointless to have
small,
something.
there's nothing.
Which schools are these?
It's just Warren.
Yeah,
We're just,
We're only talking about Warren,
Yeah.
right? So none of the other schools at this point in time, you know, I believe they did so part of this, you know, the genesis of this came from even just conversation with staff and a survey that the Massachusetts Teacher Association did in a building. It started with the Warren School. They just did a survey in the spring of teachers in the middle school, which I don't have the results of.
Has anybody done a survey of the children to see, I mean, it said something in here about 20% of the staff reported asthma-like symptoms. So
Right.
does anybody know what percentage of the children?
No.
That's more concerning, they're young, developing lungs.
We have not,
No.
and I can't say that we've had any complaints either coming from parents that I'm aware of, saying, you know, we're concerned about this. So, I mean, it's a good question. I mean,
Yeah.
but
Because it
you haven't,
shouldn't
you
just
haven't
affect
had
the
it brought to your
adults.
attention to even
No.
consider it?
No.
Right.
So you look at like absences and they seem to be right in line with,
well, I mean,
no.
well, I mean, yeah. I mean, we look at absences, sure, but you know, we have students who are. What percentage are, you know, kids who are just vomiting versus kids who are being pulled out of school because they're school phobic? There are a variety of reasons. Yeah.
And I had one other question.
Sure.
Are you all done? I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So, I read it.
Yeah.
That 20% really bothered me, because full disclosure, I have 2 grandchildren in the public school
Sure.
system, one at this school.
Great.
But the carbon dioxide
Mhm.
in some of the rooms, it's not supposed to be over 800, and it exceeded 1,000 parts per
Right.
mil. Is that
So-
taken care of?
Well, again, we will continue to have air quality tests. That was one test one day,
Okay,
and our testing did not show that information, right? This is the test that was performed by the MTA.
okay, so
And we
you
don't
had
ha-
the same test done and it didn't show it?
I can't give you that information whether we did or
Oh,
not. I'm saying we will continue to test the air quality of those rooms.
Okay,
And that's the plan after all the cleaning was done
uh-huh,
and we get everything back in.
okay.
That test will, certainly, we have asked the MTA if they want to come in and continue to test it, be our guest. We're doing everything we can to ensure that the quality of the air is good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Because we were discussing yesterday the construction project next to the middle school here.
Yeah. We won't go there.
Apparently, some of the residents did complain about some dust and everything coming out of the
Yeah.
phase 1 construction. So they're still working on the phase 2, so I was suggesting the board to see whether the Concom to see whether they could request the construction group to have air quality monitoring
Yeah.
or dust monitoring. Have you ever had any complaint from any of them, dust going into the middle school from the neighboring?
Not that I'm
construction?
aware of, KG, no,
Okay.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I've got my own issues with that, but,
Well, you should have come yesterday. You should have
in
come
the next
yesterday.
phase that I received a report on, but no, we haven't. But again, the middle school staff was surveyed in the spring, probably in the end of May. So we don't have that information. They haven't shared it with us, so we don't know. Of course, they went on break, so the gentleman from the MTA probably has not reviewed all the data. As I said, he's going around to, 30, 40 communities in the Commonwealth doing the same testing in buildings.
Yeah, they're coming up with a phase 2, which is
Yeah.
slightly bigger than what they did in the
Right,
phase 1,
right,
so
yeah.
there could be a lot more dust and
Could be.
everything coming up.
I'll,
So be there.
I'll pull a full disclosure too. I'm a member of the MTA.
Yeah,
And I can tell you, to
Yeah.
your issue, if they
I'm
were
surprised at me.
concerned,
no,
if they were concerned
Yeah.
about the students,
Yeah.
you would know.
right. So part of it, no, to your
Yeah.
point though, the one thing that I try to emphasize, I have children of my own. I have young kids. We have principals and we have teachers who have kids in those buildings as well. I will never put a child at risk, ever. And that's just, it won't happen. The building would be shut. If that report had come back to us and said, we're really concerned about that building, it needs to be shut down, it would have been shut down.
Well, you
There's
said-
nowhere it says that.
Right, you
Right.
said you did your own report.
We did, but we also took into consideration the report that they provided us as well, right? So the recommendations that are there are what we're implementing versus the recommendations that came back from Universal was, you're fine. You don't really need to do much unless you want to. There's no concern.
My
So-
last question was, it said there were 11 tiles that were identified as
Yeah.
cracked.
Yeah.
So are these like in the hallway? The kids are kicking them with their feet?
No, well, some are in the hallway, some were in the classrooms.
So
And those are the ones I was talking about, oops, excuse me, they get sealed.
so they weren't sealed?
No, they were.
They
They just
were?
identified. And so we had someone come in to verify, so we took pictures to show the MTA. They identified, they didn't say they weren't sealed properly.
Okay,
We just wanted to make sure that when they were sealed, that we took pictures and we sent them back to the state. The state said, absolutely, you're doing everything right.
okay,
You don't have to worry about it.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that wasn't understood when I
yeah.
read it.
No, of course not, right? I mean, it's written for,
I don't think it was written for that. I thought it was a good report.
yeah,
Um,
it was fine.
And I'd love to read your report, your
It's
universal
on there.
report,
It's on the website.
the universal
Yep.
one that you, okay.
Yep.
So there are
But they're very
some
different.
similarities?
Well, there's some similarities, but it was about air quality, mold testing.
Oh, good,
It was really the concern from our lens started out as mold.
yeah.
And was there mold in the building and what type of spores and was it
Right.
impacting, because we know mold exists right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's not like all mold is bad mold in terms of your breathing. So we actually had our testing done before the MTA came in and did theirs. But again, like I said, we're gonna continue to monitor and continue the air quality testing. We're always gonna have concerns with older buildings, with poor air, no air conditioning. And I think that's something that you know, as we move forward.
Yeah.
That's why I'm really proud of the working group of the teachers and our administration to meet the needs and to spend the time and the resources to ensure that the air quality is good and that the rooms are in good shape. And, you know, we have, like I said, we have 2 more modular classrooms that are being installed right now.
Those are like outdoor?
Well, they're attached to our normal building, right? So it's just they're trailers, if you will, but so we'll have 6 classrooms now that have been attached to our building at Warren, and they have the best. They have air conditioning.
I was wondering, I was
They're
gonna
the
ask you
best.
that.
You know, they're you know, they probably are the best rooms because they have wonderful air.
Are they a certain grade?
This year they will all be grade 1, I think. Yeah, so we took an opportunity as well that Warren is an interesting building itself with the way it's configured. And over the years, one would think that you might have kindergarten in one area, first grade in another, and second grade in another. So there's consistency within, right? That's not how it was. You might have kindergarten, room 25, which I was talking about, is in one area, and another kindergarten room was all the way on the opposite side of the building. When in reality, kindergarten teachers collaborate a lot, and we want them closer to one another. So we took the opportunity this summer, actually, the principal of the building, as we were doing these cleanings, to move teachers around, which was a good thing too, because it allowed for a little bit of cleaning out, if you will, of classrooms that had been there for 25 years and teachers in classrooms for 25 years and the accumulation of materials for 25 years. It's
I can imagine.
I've seen that kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but again, I think that's important to understand though, is because that does impact the air as well, right? I mean, the more things you have in there, the less flow you're going to get within the building or within the room itself. But also, if you've had any water damage over maybe 10 years ago, and in a closet, and you didn't recognize it, and you haven't been in that closet for 10 years or 5 years, who knows what's in there? So the opportunity to do some triage was great. So
One additional question.
Sure, Ron.
and
Yeah.
I'm not trying to
Yeah.
stir the pot.
Yeah,
around,
yeah.
and so you don't have to answer. What's the impetus for the Mass Teachers Association to do this
So
versus yours?
yeah,
there-
no, I don't think stirring the pot at all. I think it's a
I'm just
valid
interested.
question, and I think what's important is we want to make sure we have many of our buildings in the Commonwealth are getting older, and I think the MTA is doing their due diligence as they should, and the AEA, we call it Ashland Educators here, is doing their due diligence, making sure that our facilities are appropriate, are clean, and are healthy work and learning environments. I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm not disputing the stuff that's in there. I think it's great. It sort of has led to good discussion for us and has led to us making some changes within our protocols as well in terms of thinking about furniture. I mean, this is a simple thing. Thinking about the furniture you have in a classroom. So if you've got 23 students in a classroom and each has a desk, right? I'll use 20 because it's easier for me with the math. 20 students in there, right? And you've got a 4-legged desk. And you want to make sure that the room is thoroughly sanitized. What do you need to do? You need to wipe down all the legs on those 4 desks, right? In addition to the top and the bottom of the desk. So now you've got that's 80 of them. So instead of having furniture which we've moved to, tables, which are bigger, longer, and have 4 legs, the surface is easier to clean. The legs are easier to clean. So we're changing out our furniture as well to help with the ability to clean more thoroughly from our current staff. But certainly we have desks that have been there for 30 years, 40 years. But if you want a thorough cleaning, those have to be sanitized and wiped down. And you're talking, like I said, a couple hours a room to do that. So, but I'm pleased with the effort. We sent a memo out too with regard to what staff responsibilities are, and I think that's important. So staff was bringing in their own cleaning supplies. we had to put a stop to that. So hold on, you can't bring in stuff from the outside we don't know is appropriate to be used. So we will provide, and we do provide, the appropriate cleaning supplies for your classroom, so you can help wipe something down. But it's got to be approved through the schools and through Joe Richardson. The furniture and rugs, staff tend to bring in their own stuff as opposed to running it by, the school department. Paint, types of paint you have in the classroom. So we have a teacher in there this week who's painting her own classroom. It's an old building, it's tired, and so we had to, she brought in, said, hey, can we use this type of paint, specific paint for our classroom? Absolutely, we'll supply it. You want to do the labor, go ahead, which she did. But those are types of things, and keeping the vents clean. Don't put stuff in front of the air vents. They're simple things that will help improve the quality of the air to begin with. I just thought we lost sight of it.
I'd like to say I have personal experience with some of the stuff you've been going through with school buildings, with air quality testing in school buildings, with union involvement.
Yep.
So from what I've heard you say, all the stuff you do, I feel good about that. I feel good about the path you're on and the way you're doing it. And I mean, the only recommendations I can make from my personal experiences is be transparent to everybody, and you have been so far. Because once the transparency is gone and you're not honest about everything good and bad, then what I find people speculate, and speculation becomes rumor, and rumor becomes truth.
Right.
So as long as you're out there and put the truth
Yeah.
out there all the time,
Yeah.
you cover yourself and you get onto it. And then the other thing is, if you can keep the peace, and it sounds like in your case you have been able to keep the peace between the labor and management, and that was not the case in some of the situations that I've been in, and it gets way ugly. So good job.
So thanks. No, I think, Chris, to your point, though, I think it's important to understand that the situation we're in, there's not one employee in the district, and I'm clear, that's from custodial, maintenance, teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators. We get it. It's about the kids and about the health and well-being of them, as well as our staff who work for us. And as far as transparency, I would certainly think in my time here, like I said, in my 11th year, this stuff here is posted.
Yeah.
The letter goes out to everybody in the community. I send it to Michael to have him send it to the community.
I can vouch as a parent.
Right,
Yeah.
not just the parents, but it's a community concern. And as soon as we get everything done, there'll be another letter coming out in the next probably 2 weeks, once we get an opportunity to get everything back in and quality testing done again. I think it's important to share that with the community. I'm not hiding anything, and that's why we post everything as soon as we get it.
Well, even in the future, our board obviously is very interested in these,
Yeah.
and just reviewing it, and that's why we wanted you here to just talk publicly, because we're televised as well, and just because people have talked about it, and, there's stories, if you will, so we want to make sure that everybody's understanding what the facts of the situation
No,
are.
I thank you for that. Like I said, as a parent myself, I would never, I'm not gonna put any of your children, grandchildren, in danger. It's not what I'm gonna do. And if we're being told at the highest levels of individuals who are professionals in air quality and mold testing, and that the facility is safe and can be used for its purpose of educating children, then we're gonna keep it open. That doesn't mean we can't improve in some of the things that we're trying to do, which is what I think the recommendations are trying to get at. So.
If I can just add
absolutely. I was gonna
a
ask
couple
you.
of points and questions. First and foremost, Jim has always been very transparent with us and actually very helpful. We have to go back, 15 years when you were the athletic director, maybe more?
11, yeah.
11, and he was very helpful with the Board of Health in respects to promoting head concussion regulations, and came to our meetings because it was a new area we were approaching that wasn't approached prior. They had head concussion requirements for schools, but not for sport athletic groups. So Jim was very influential in that, and and has always been, in my view, with our relationship, very transparent. A question maybe, the tools for schools noted at the end, I think you pretty much are addressing it. One of the things is staffing and communication in that little house diagram they show at the beginning. And It sounds like you're meeting with the teachers on a monthly,
It's,
quarterly?
if not, well, when they're in session, at least monthly.
Good.
And then, when, the way it typically works is each building has representatives, union representatives within their own building, and they meet with leadership within that building. In this case, the Warren Safety, we call it the Warren Safety Committee. They're not only meeting with the principal, Pete Regan, but they meet with Barbara Duran and Joe Richardson on a regular basis to ensure, what's being done. And Barbara, over the course of the summer, sends updates. We take pictures of what's going on so we can keep them updated. And when they come back on the 26th, we've requested another meeting to ensure that they understand completely what occurred and what our responsibilities are moving forward. I think that's really important to
On
know.
both sides.
On both sides, not just
Right.
the school, just not the school side in terms of the management of the rooms. There's that responsibility that educators have within their own rooms as well. And that has to be relayed.
Well, as you mentioned, even bringing in your own cleaning
Right.
equipment isn't always
Right.
a good solution until it's reviewed.
Right.
One other point I just wanted to make is that you mentioned some simple items that were communicated, not putting items on the vent cases. And obviously that stops and impedes the venting of this room. So that's, I think, what EPA is getting at too, is that communication can be just a matter of a simple step. And maybe put in furniture that is a shelf or something for them, so they can store that extra equipment if need be. But Kevin Johnson and I, we went to, about 10 years ago, an EPA session on various indoor air quality, as well as some other staff, including Ron. And one thing I do remember is they were talking about the need to change filters on a regular basis.
Yep.
And hopefully that still has carried through since
It
Kevin's
has.
days.
Right, and it has, and that, I didn't mention it here, I was looking at all the stuff we've done, and it talks, and clearly, one of the things I wrote down was all the air filters have been changed. We do it on a quarterly basis, we look at it, but some of the airflow, the vents themselves in terms of vacuuming them out, probably hadn't been done since I've been here. But the intakes versus the outflow, some would say, well, you don't need to focus on that as much as the out. Well, we clean the ins as well, which is just an
They're
extra
both pretty
step.
important.
Well, listen, I am an educator and a former CPA. I can do accounting and I can do education. But when I listen and hire people who are qualified, HEPA and HERPA and all the,
Acronyms.
all the acronyms you can get for air quality, I've got to trust them too, right? I can't, I'm not going to second guess when I've got professionals saying, this is what you need to worry about or not worry about. Focus your energy here versus focus your energy here. Otherwise we'd never get anything done either.
Yes, just want to let you know that the same construction committee is coming on the 9th of September for Conservation Commission hearing.
Okay.
That may be the final hearing, I don't know yet. So I know that there's no student who would be able to come and represent themselves.
Right.
You may be the representative or somebody from there. If there is an issue of noise, because they are going to crush the stones right there, the boulders, as well as they're going to have mud piled up and everything. So there could be dust issue and other
Right.
things that if you notice it or if you're concerned about it,
Yep.
come out there and
Thank you.
present yourself.
Yeah, having lived through the field or construction at the high school with the actual blasting during the day, if you remember those days with the rocks being crushed, it was actually quite exciting. The kids loved actually watching it.
They don't seem to blast it, they're going to hammer it
Yeah,
down, so
no,
that's
I
going to
know.
take a lot of noise.
Yeah,
Plus crushing it right there on site. That's
I'm
what
sure
the
teachers
plan.
will let us know if the noise is,
But keep them aware of it
I
so
can
that they know
guarantee
that
you
the
they
hearing
will.
is on 9th of September, so the
Okay.
construction may not begin, but if they
Right.
had the experience previously,
Right.
and the children go out
Yeah, and
during
I-
the daytime, and
yeah.
all of these things going to happen in the daytime.
Yeah.
That would happen.
They're
in the
not, they're not shy of letting me know how they're
Okay.
feeling.
evening. Just keep it.
So,
Diane, and just one other
Yeah,
point,
sorry,
Jim, if
Mark,
I
yeah.
can. If you can't stay for the whole meeting,
Yeah.
Diane has a very important update related to public health nursing services.
Okay.
You're welcome to call me, or you can update them right now about
Well, I was gonna say, and
what's going on
it's
with
more of
them.
just a notification,
Okay.
because I didn't tell you
Yeah.
we were gonna
Yeah, yeah,
discuss this,
yeah,
so I'm not
yeah.
looking for feedback,
Yeah.
but we'll
yeah,
I
Yeah,
guess I'm the
so-
chair, I can move it.
Yeah, I was gonna
But
say.
just to
it'd be a
let
good
you know,
time.
and the board, because the board hasn't been brought up to speed, as I met with the city of Framingham, Mark, myself, the director of Framingham, as well as the chairperson,
For the Board of
and
Health.
for the Board of Health, they asked us if we wanted to entertain regionalizing our nursing services.
Okay.
So what has happened over the time, excuse me, with Framingham is they're getting inundated with walk-ins because there's people who relocate to this area and need to get their children in schools. And I know you're aware that we're having this issue here in town
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
So they're going and get free physicals, and then that our agency is sending them to the Framingham Board of Health for vaccinations.
Okay.
So they're getting it from the whole region.
Sure.
So they had to put a stop to it. That's, I know we've had a little bit of a discussion about it. So when they sat down and talked to us, they were very interested in regionalizing it because they just opened up a facility, grand openings next week, downtown Framingham, a storefront location, brand new. And they're willing to take Ashland residents.
Okay.
Just if anybody's watching, it's not, you know, we will start this process. Their facility's opening up next week. But they're gonna be talking to Holliston.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I just got an email before we came here. Hudson
Hudson.
apparently is interested, because we all have a part-time position, maybe
Right.
5 or 10 hours a week.
Yeah, yeah.
And everybody appears to be having the same problem that we're facing here in Ashland, is we have families moving into town, and for their children to start school in September,
Sure.
they don't have the proper vaccinations as physicals.
Right.
So Framingham is going to be that agency who's gonna take
Okay.
care of it all for us. As of right now, they're willing to take, because we have a number from the school department. There's families who are in need for September. They're willing to, because we're talking about this now and working on a regionalization agreement, they're willing to accommodate our students
Okay.
and vaccinate them so they can start school September 3rd.
So I'm under the impression that there's been conversation then with Audrey?
Audrey.
Audrey
and-
Audrey is aware of it.
Okay.
And Erin
um,
Paolini.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
right.
So we have all communicated
Right.
with it. Like I said, we haven't signed an agreement with
Okay.
them yet. They're talking to Holliston right now in Hopkinton.
Yep.
And then we'll sit down and have a formal meeting and then work
Awesome.
out an
Great.
actual agreement.
Right.
But we were all very concerned that we only have a limited service for part-time,
Sure.
part-time nurse. We wanna help the school with their children to start on day one, but we didn't have the resources
Right.
either. So Framingham is, I'm pleased to announce,
Great.
they're willing to
Well, thank
accommodate
you.
those
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
And then we'll keep you up to date as it moves forward.
Yeah, as you know, I mean, we are still a growing community, and we are seeing a tremendous amount of families and students who are coming into our community that need support and services that didn't 11 years ago when I started here. And so it's wonderful to hear that, and I knew it was a question I didn't have to ask about Audrey because I know
Right.
how on top of everything she is to begin with.
She's amazing.
She is amazing, and so that's great to hear. So
Well, and it was a very good meeting. I mean, I was actually thrilled. I'm thrilled for them that they can have this clinic in downtown Framingham, because they were facing the same thing.
Yeah.
Their physical Board of Health location is located at a flag school. So they had families who do not have transportation and who have to walk 45 minutes to get their child a vaccination. So that's what they're even saying for, if somebody here in town needs to take public transportation, it's
Yeah.
very,
Absolutely.
conveniently located. We also let, I'm sorry, what's the woman's name at the school? Erin?
Erin Paolini.
Erin, know also that any families that need help with maybe enrolling in Mass Health insurance, we have Jennifer Wolfing that works
Yep.
at the senior
Yep.
center. So we kind of pulled that together as well, so we
Good.
can help the families, because chances are if they need a vaccination, they need possibly something
Sure.
else. So I feel really good about that. I think we pulled it together, and even Framingham, they will be helping people with that also. So
Yeah.
if the family goes there and they need other services outside, they will be able to help them kind of get
Great.
on the path that they need to.
Not just at the beginning of school either, there's an
Right.
influx at
Sure.
certain times of the year. So-
Well, and I was gonna
Yeah.
say, and that,
Try-
this specifically applies to you for, the vaccinations to get into
Yeah.
school, but they were saying that I actually asked, it's only been a couple of weeks, but they
Yeah.
have had one student,
Good.
which is great.
Right.
But when it comes to flu season,
Sure.
that as well. So, we're gonna get numbers just to have,
Yeah.
and we'll share them with you, because I think it's,
I think it's great. No,
I think
I
it's been a
think
good service.
this is our first year that we have actually a central register
Wonderful. Yep, I
in
know.
Ashland. It's been great. Erin's overwhelmed, but then she's got a couple different roles, and it makes it overwhelming at times when you're actually trying to get the bus schedule out too for everybody. But this is our first summer with the central register, and having one location that we can get the needs met, and then Audrey comes in and looks at all of the information to see from a medical standpoint, do we have all of the information we need? And if not, you know, they can direct the families to get certain things done. And, you know, I think it's great. It's fantastic.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's a community of full support around here, which is,
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
yeah, good. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yep, and we'll keep you up to date on that as well, and again, with just, you know, we know the numbers of
Right.
potentials that they'll see before school starts, so
Okay.
we'll,
And I will share out, I'll probably send it to Mark and he can share with the board respectively in terms of when I draft the next letter to the community.
Right.
You know, like I said, quite often I'll send it either to Jen Ball or to Michael, and he can ship it out through that listserv versus those who aren't signed up for the school listserv. But we'll make sure that whatever information we have, you certainly get.
great,
So.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
My pleasure.
Thank
Thank you.
Keep
Off
up
to
the good work.
Mendez
Yes.
School Building. Want to know anything about that right now?
We're good.
All set.
On schedule,
Thanks
right?
again, Jim.
It's somewhere. Tonight's a big night. We're hopefully hiring a designer.
Excellent.
Right.
Hopefully.
That's a perfect lead to our next subject, Madam Chair. Vaccinations.
No, that's not a next
Yeah, no, it's
subject.
not. I'm like, what agenda item be?
Where are you?
Agenda item number 4.
Oh,
for-
yeah.
she's,
Some
I
vaccination.
was like, I'm like, do we have
This is
something
a
else?
perfect lead-in, we're talking about vaccinations and ta-da. So, I'll let them finish, but.
That's right.
While they're talking, I'll distribute my material.
Awesome,
Got
thank you.
materials to distribute.
Goodbye.
Yeah, so I just have like a couple of quick things that you guys can look at. and
Everyone
kinda, like,
knows Kaylee.
Yes,
Yeah.
Kaylee.
Hi, Kaylee.
Kaylee is our summer intern.
Yes.
So these will
Thank you,
hopefully
Kaylee.
just kind of like give good visuals as to what I'm talking about.
Thank
so
you. We're a visual.
I'm definitely a visual learner, so
Yes.
I thought this might help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if she was giving me, when you said vaccines.
No, it was like perfect timing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Worked out good for Jim to know about the
Oh,
vaccination.
I didn't know, because we had communicated, and I told him just about the, I was like, should I bring it up or should I? And I'm like,
I think it was
All
good that
right.
he was
Less
here.
than off the agenda.
So go ahead, Kaylee, it's your
Yeah.
floor.
So the first figure in front of you I thought was really important because it's kind of like outlining what vaccine hesitancy is, which is a lot of what my focus was on my project. So even I like didn't know the full scale of this until I like found this figure from the World Health Organization. But vaccine hesitancy isn't just like yes or no. It's like definitely a broad scale. And you have people who like are hesitant but they say yes. You have people that are hesitant and say no, and others like delay things. So this really put into perspective of like why this project was kind of so hard to gauge about like the necessity of it, because there are plenty of people who are vaccine hesitant, but like they're still on that chart as like they're vaccinated. So part of the reason why I thought this project was so important is because vaccine hesitancy is becoming so prevalent. Even like with the measles outbreaks all over the country, like we see that people aren't getting the vaccines that they should be getting. And up to 86% of doctors surveyed said that they had people refusing vaccines. So that's a really large number. And that was back in a survey in 2013. So I'm sure that has dramatically increased today. So I kind of want to like keep things brief just so you guys do have time to like ask questions, stuff like that. But what I was really trying to do was to gather materials to kind of help combat this vaccine hesitancy. And part of that was figuring out what was most effective. So the first chart on the second page shows a visual from a study that explored the presumptive approach. And this is an approach that doctors can use to get to talk to parents about vaccines. And kind of the whole idea of it is like presuming that they're going to get the vaccine. So it's like, oh, today we're gonna like give your kid some shots. Or like, oh, Johnny needs his like MMR vaccine today. Not like, oh, do you want to vaccinate him today? Like, oh, how do you feel about vaccines? It's like really like saying like, this is what we're gonna do. And as you can see from the kind of complicated chart, was that parents were 14.2 times more likely to say no if the person used the like participatory like, oh, what do you think method versus the presumptive approach. So when finding materials for physicians and like healthcare providers, I really wanted to like focus on that approach and how to use it because it's been shown to be very effective. And then the second is from a chart, a study that showed, that explored how parents' like attitudes were changed based on being presented with certain materials. So they had 3 groups. They had a group that they presented materials about like, it was a narrative from a mother whose child had measles, pictures of children with rubella, and one other narrative about a child that had a vaccine preventable illness. The second group was presented with materials like correcting the whole idea that vaccines cause autism. And then the third was just given some completely like unrelated scientific data. And they found that correcting the idea that autism caused vaccines was only as effective as the control, whereas actually like presenting parents with the risks of not getting vaccinated was most effective. So that's another thing that I really focused on for materials given to parents, since it's been shown to be more effective. So with that, I also attached my abstract in case you want to read it, but definitely not something you want to do right now. It's a little lengthy. But I also have a couple of examples of materials that would be distributed if this toolkit that I've created is used. One of them I want to emphasize is in Spanish, because I know that Ashland does have people who don't speak English, or like it's not their first best language. So I definitely worked on finding materials that were in other languages such as Spanish, Russian, Hindi, and that was a little difficult, but working on it. So yeah, do you guys have any questions? Kind of the idea is that they're just materials that can be shared with care providers and parents to kind of help combat this vaccine hesitancy. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to mention is that there's also a presentation for public health and school nurses, which was very relevant like 5 minutes ago. And it could even be shared with like other communities and like their nurses at this clinic. And that was something that I talked to Nancy about, and she seemed really on board, which is why I thought that it might work, even though it is a little bit more time intensive than just like a printout. So, yeah.
Great, good job.
Very good job.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
You know, it kind of bringing into the discussion with Jim Adams, the superintendent, I think that's another thing that will be beneficial for us when we have, I say, more nursing services.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
we are, you know, limited for time, but that people can get the information, and that's one thing that when we sat and talked about it with the city of Framingham, is we don't want people to just come in and just get a vaccination. People probably need other services as well of information.
Mm-hmm.
And I think taking the positive approach like that and providing them with the information is going to be helpful.
Yeah. And you probably can't tell because it's in Spanish, but one of them is specifically about the flu vaccine. So it's not just like getting kids into school, like getting them their like necessary vaccines, but also every year like getting that flu vaccine as well.
Yeah, and that's what we're gonna do, is they're gonna be doing everything for us, which is
Yeah.
great, but they will be able to, like even Nancy, they potentially might be able to bring her on,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, she might be the educator, or they're gonna have people there to help people with these things, because some of it might be a little bit more complicated.
Yeah.
for people to navigate.
That material will be important, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
This is
Yeah,
all
of
in
course.
electronic form that you can pass it on to Mark, and if Mark
We could,
makes
Yeah.
a summary of it and put it on our website, if it's helpful for people to read and then understand and then
Yeah.
use it as a tool to promote vaccine itself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a good idea.
Really good idea.
Kaylee, when you're doing your research,
Yeah.
did you come across materials that kind of emphasized best practices to get people to comply? Or
Yeah, that's
did
kind of
you-
like what I was looking for.
So that's what you were looking
Yeah.
for. And, you know, and then if you look at it's very interesting when you look at this graph.
Mhm.
So there's gonna be 26% of people who already are kind of told that's what we're gonna do today that resist it.
Yeah.
And which is a high number, that only 3/4 of those 3/4 that are even gonna, from that presumptive, are gonna do it. And certainly only 4% out of the 26% that, you know, that say, all right, well, I think we're gonna do this today. Only 4% of those people change their mind. That's another big number.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know,
That's why, like, it's not just the presumptive approach that's important, but, like, one of the materials is, like, frequently asked questions, like, things you can tell people that kind of, like, it's not just that approach. It's, like, getting them other resources and materials that can help change their mind when they do, even the presumptive approach doesn't work.
My older daughter's in her 3rd year, and she will, they learn to tell patients, you really need to get these vaccines, and then you'll come up with arguments that you can't, that you can't argue with, I think, if you're a reasonable person. Well,
Yeah.
why would I vaccinate my child when this disease is already eradicated?
Yeah.
Well, it's eradicated because people get vaccinated, so it can. And then you see the examples of all these measles outbreaks where there really shouldn't be that.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have that stuff. But people are so resistant, and she'll try to have conversations with people, and a lot of these people are more rural, and maybe they're not coming into contact with a ton of people. But I agree with this, with the large percentage of people that aren't getting vaccinated, and that's a public health risk now to everybody.
Exactly.
Instead of just especially those people, but it's everybody.
Yeah.
And it's a big issue. So I don't know if there's, I don't know what, because I don't do that. I just do feed. So I don't know what
Just
primary cares or pediatricians get taught about how to best encourage people without trying to put them off,
Yeah.
especially if you already know you're going to go into somebody that has an aversion against it.
Yeah.
Because there's a 0.1% chance my kid could get autism. Well, that's a scary thought, but
Yeah.
there's got to be. I don't know what the answer is, but
And I'm sure,
nice job on the research.
Thank you. And I'm sure your daughter learned a lot more, being at the age that she is, year 3, she probably learned a lot more about talking to these patients, whereas doctors that are older, that vaccine hesitancy wasn't a thing when they were going through school. They might not know how to deal with it. So I'm hoping that these materials will even help those people too.
I just say get a vaccine. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
There wasn't any.
What do you mean you don't want a vaccine?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your arm out.
Yeah, right.
But I think this all comes down to
Yeah.
basically what we just talked about with the superintendent, communication.
Right.
Having that time for communication, and doctors need to factor in maybe a couple extra minutes to discuss anyone's concerns about vaccinating their children. I can say just one quick story. When we were doing the H1N1 vaccinations, our first one was for pregnant females as well as infants, children under 6, I believe. And during that vaccination clinic, we spent 20 minutes dealing with a parent who was very concerned and resistant. And thankfully, he wasn't a doctor or medical, he was a veterinarian, but he spent almost 20 minutes with her trying to convince her the importance of getting vaccinated. But it takes time.
Yeah.
Hopefully, our medical field is there, but hopefully the people that pay the bill understand that our doctors need that time for discussion. My doctor being in the medical field to some degree, you're told you need to see 20 patients within 8 hours, and hopefully those concepts will allow for time to discuss vaccinations. In my view, I don't know how you feel, Ron, but.
Right, well, I completely agree. So I think if you can convince somebody that there's, one of the interesting things that she said is that, these people that really, the younger people that don't really have, any scientific basis to draw from have a lot of preconceived notions where, they heard it somewhere, they read it online, which is always a great place to get medical information. I hear that almost every
Facebook.
day.
It's great.
Yeah, I don't
The internet doesn't lie.
exactly, right, exactly. So, it's really, I don't know how, I don't really know how it's going to change anytime soon, because there's so many people that have,
Strong opinion. but
yeah, very
some people
strong
have-
opinion about, I'm not doing this. I don't care what anybody says. And it's definitely a problem. So nice job on the research. That's,
Thank you.
yeah.
Very important subject.
Very good job.
You have extras? We need
Thank you.
just make copies.
Yeah,
before we use it. Just
Oh,
so
here,
we can
okay.
copy.
Yeah, I also have an online copy of everything to give you.
Those two? Then
Yeah.
just send that.
That's
Okay.
great, yeah. It'll be good to have that.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
She's got to, it's up to the board. Kaylee said she can stay, but
You're
I
welcome
know
to
she has to
stay.
run and get her project for tomorrow, so.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
no,
you
go
do
do
not
it.
have to
Go get
stay.
it.
Yeah.
I don't know, some of these things look
Yes,
interesting.
you're more
I'll
than
stay for a
welcome
little
to
while.
stay.
You can,
Do you have an extra copy
watch
of
it on your
the,
Well, thank you
computer.
for all, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like
Yeah.
tune in next month. What's happening?
Well, thank you for all your hard
Yeah.
work.
Watch
Yeah,
it.
thank
Everything
you.
last
Thank you
year.
for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
When are you through? Are you done? Are you?
Tomorrow, there's
Tomorrow's
like
your
final
last-
presentations like at the State Department of Public Health. So,
Very nice.
Yep.
And when you start back?
like right after Labor Day.
Right. That's great. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next item on the agenda is appointment of a member to the Nyanza Advisory Committee. This appointment, I am currently serving it by default. John was on the board. But if anybody is interested or anybody has a nomination, any discussion about it?
This was brought up yesterday because my schedule is not known firmly for coming up. I may be the one going from the Concom, so I don't want to repeat myself as another member from board. So it'll be one member short, thinking twice in the board. So I will defer it right now if I don't get on the Concom, because they have a vacancy there, so they're looking for somebody from the Army Corps that might come up there. So if he goes, then I would go from here. And I did ask them to defer the decision because they said fine to next meeting.
Okay.
And if anybody else wants to go, then I will back off. Otherwise, I
well,
will
the
take
sa-
it based on my schedule because I don't want to mess up their meetings by not attending it.
Yeah.
So I just
Right.
want to make sure.
Why don't we put it on the agenda?
Well, the appointments expire August 31st of each year, so,
We don't meet again until 9/3.
When's
they're
their,
not
when's
meeting
their
anyway.
next meeting?
Yeah, when are those meetings, Diane? Do you know?
We don't
The
know yet.
Nyanza
Sub-
Advisory?
I went to
Most
one
of the times it's
since
been
I was
Monday.
appointed by the board, I believe it was a Thursday evening. They don't meet regularly.
No, they do not.
Yeah.
There's no schedule, like the next meeting is not even scheduled yet.
Okay.
I mean, again, I don't have a problem continuing it either. I mean, if you want me to continue for
I
now.
think so. That
I
way,
could do
unless
that and
unless
then-
somebody is volunteering
Well,
now, I
absolutely.
don't mind.
I mean,
Because if I'm not from the Concom, then I don't mind going from the Board of Health. But if I'm the only designated person from Concom, then they have to choose somebody else from the
Right.
board.
Oh, I see.
yeah.
And you have enough to do. And let me do it at least until, if KG can do it, because you got enough stuff to do, so.
Okay.
That's one thing I can do to help out, you know.
Do I hear a
'cause
nomination?
I nominate Ron.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great.
So, will I be on some kind of list where those?
Yep,
you
so
know,
what
some-
happens
They-
is,
The Board of Selectmen have to appoint him,
Well,
and
we-
then you have to go back downstairs and swear yourself in
Yes.
with the clerk.
yep, so what
Oh
will
my God, I
happen?
gotta do that again?
Yes.
No problem, I can do
You
that.
gotta see that.
Yep, so you'll be on
Okay.
a list, and again, it's up every August, so we'll be notified
Okay,
next year, unless something changes in between, we can.
okay. And then if you have the commitment, I'll hold the spot warm for you until you can do it.
No.
If you wanna do it.
It will be from Concom anyway, if I'm there.
Oh, okay.
So
So
I
that-
probably will see you.
Oh, okay,
Right.
all right, great.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron. All right, so.
Yeah,
Chris
if I
is-
accept here, except there will be one person
Yeah,
doing
no,
two
no,
jobs,
no,
so
okay.
the number of members in the committee will be less.
Gonna hand it over to Chris, he just gave us a handout,
Okay, so I will
tobacco
go.
regulations.
Yeah, I will go through this pretty quickly. I have all the edits in yellow. At the top of page 1, I've already made a correction. Judy has asked me to use Judy instead of Judith.
Okay.
But just correcting the names up there and the current positions. The next change is on page 4, and you'll see it in yellow. It's a definition of smoke accessories. And I
This is Framingham.
took the definition right out of Framingham's.
Okay.
So that was the first thing. There were 3 things we discussed at our last meeting, and I rewatched a portion of the tobacco things to make sure I got them all. We wanted to define smoke accessories. We wanted to make sure we were clear that they can only be sold to people 21 and over. And we wanted to make sure that people that hold a tobacco permit are the only people that can sell them. Okay, so if we look at page 6,
So if I look at this, Mark, should I talk now or wait? Oh, wait.
yeah, why don't we see if your question gets answered?
Okay.
Okay, so we defined smoke accessories in that first one. Page 6, so that we cover the point where tobacco permit has to have, be held to sell. In item E1 and E3, I simply added or smoke accessories after tobacco products. And moving on to page 8, I put a subsection H in there, sale of smoke accessories. To reiterate, the sale of smoke accessories shall be limited to individuals who are 21 years of age or older, so that we get our age thing in. And moving on to page 9, the violations. I added and smoke accessories after all tobacco products, so that we cover the smoke accessories portion of it. And then the only other changes on page 11, and that's just the clerical thing with getting the names and positions correct again. So, reviewing the changes, again, and going back, and I went back again last night to review our last meeting, because we had a really great discussion, actually. But at the end of the day, the 3 points we really wanted to be sure of was the definition, 21 and over, and have to have a tobacco license to sell them. And I think that the changes I've made cover all those. Judy?
So, your smoke accessories is like rolling papers, and you can only buy those at a store that sells tobacco?
Nope,
No,
no.
You have to hold the tobacco.
You have to hold a tobacco license
right,
to be able to sell smoke accessories.
okay, so it's not two different,
No,
we
no,
talked about that,
no,
it's
no.
one?
It's one
Okay.
place.
So if you sell cigarettes,
Anybody that
You
has a
can
tobacco
sell
license.
smoke
Yes,
accessories.
correct.
okay.
Mhm. And that
But
was
you
one
have
of
to
the
be
concerns that
21
you
for
had.
cigarettes too? I don't even know.
Yes,
Yes,
Okay.
that's
cigarettes required.
And we
current
were
law.
making it in line with
Yeah.
the regular,
Yeah.
yeah, the regulation.
I think even the state has come up with 21 now.
Have they?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Chris, is there, and I know just from looking at, the last minutes, and I think, was there any potential problem with specifically defining 21 for smoke accessories?
Nope.
Since that's not, can we just do that, or?
Well, we were chit-chatting, so I assume the next step would be, is we would plan having a public discussion, like we always do for our
Okay.
regulations, for these specific changes, because we already know this change is gonna be taking effect January 1st, which are already approved, signed, and we've already had that public forum. So we would have a public forum specifically just for these changes.
Yes, thank you for saying that, because that's really important.
So
to
we were
emphasize.
saying is, again, summertime is a little busy, people get back to school, maybe late September, have our public discussion.
Yep.
17th would be good.
After that discussion, like we would, tonight, if everybody's good with these changes, we'll vote to move forward on the draft. Have that public discussion in September, take comments, consideration, so forth. We would meet probably one more time to discuss them, if there's any changes we wish to make, then vote to approve them. Again, probably October, and have it effective January 1st as well. So these would be effective January 1st, as
right.
well as with the
Smart.
current.
Yeah, it's the way to do
So
it.
I think that makes sense to
Yeah.
everybody?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
I was just thinking second meeting in September might be better,
yeah,
just with
this,
people getting back
it
to
is, it would
swing
give
of things.
people, because the first meeting is the 3rd, and that's
Right.
when everybody's going back
Yep.
to school anyway,
Yep.
so.
We could add too, if the
Sure.
board feels uncomfortable, we could pass it by legal counsel
Yeah.
for final verification after
Yeah.
public
Yeah,
proceeding.
because she looked at the last round, right?
Yeah, she actually commented that you can regulate around smoke accessories, but you can't eliminate, which
No,
you're not.
the
doing.
last batch of regulations that were approved by the board, she reviewed
I
that,
believe
right?
she did.
Okay, yeah, we
Yeah.
can have her take another,
Sure.
I have a question here, so if things go like what we scheduled, so the final voting would happen sometime way before December, is that?
oh, like first
Yeah.
meeting in October, probably?
October 1st.
And
We just wouldn't do
There was
it-
one lingering question that we had about that permit which is hanging in the air. So would you like to add a temporary amendment to that, saying that whatever that leftover should be filed in before 30th of November if people want to have it? That way, they don't come back on the 30th of December and start applying for it, and then
So,
we're in trouble with it.
to that point, KG, and keep me honest here, we can, I think, take a vote as a board to dissolve that license,
Or
right?
if you wish, you could do that.
Yeah, so that
But
Effective.
not under this regulation, though.
We could do it in general. We
In
don't
general.
have to have a public meeting, we could
Oh,
decide.
we can do that now. We can do
Yeah,
that
you
beforehand.
But then it needs to be announced beforehand you do that, right?
Yeah,
You need to
you-
put it on the,
You would want to
Agenda.
probably
no?
consider it a variance to your own proposed code, but, you know, just make it, I would ask legal counsel to draft the motion to make sure it's all within the
Yeah.
four
But
corners, as
What would
they
be the
say.
purpose of that? Because because are you?
If somebody
think-
comes at the end of the December and say, then we don't wanna get confusion about, one day before, 2 day before, all that stuff that we talked
Well,
about it.
and again,
But they'd have
But if
to
it's
follow
gonna-
these rules.
right, they would follow the current ones in place.
Right.
These would be January, but, not that I'm promoting somebody coming and applying, but, I don't feel it necessary. Like, for me personally, I'm like, let it ride.
Mhm.
If somebody chooses to come in, we issue it just like we do to everybody else. And then,
Okay.
because effective next year, when this happens,
Yeah,
it goes away.
Mhm.
So we only we're carrying this one
Yeah.
for a
Right.
couple of months.
3
I mean,
months.
but we can't.
Potentially, it increases the value for each of those
We
licenses.
can't.
Well, it does,
the
it,
market.
it does.
For the
it-
marketing, yes.
No, but it does as well as,
It might help this gentleman sell his business too, if that's what he's trying to do, so
Yeah.
I don't wanna hurt anybody's chances.
Well, no, nobody owns that. That license is ours. We own it.
I thought it went
No.
with that,
it didn't come back to us yet.
They've
did it?
surrendered it, right?
6
Or they
months,
have
right?
not?
Oh, it's not ours yet.
No,
Okay.
no, but it's, yeah.
Nobody's lining
if
up.
nobody over a certain
Right,
amount of
yeah,
time,
I
right?
mean,
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
No one is on
solves as of December 31st.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, look,
We had an interested party,
right.
You
That was
have to have a
little while back,
location.
Yeah.
and he had a location, the location that actually closed, they gave up the permit. But he never came back,
Mhm.
and that's where it stands, so.
You know, it's kinda like the board of, the select board, having theirs, they sit there. I mean, ours is a little different, but
Yeah.
Right,
It is
purpose-
what it is,
Purpose of
right?
introducing not to renew surrendered ones or thing was to reduce the number of vendors.
Yep.
correct.
So if that is achievable by this motion, then we could finish that right off.
We would
If
have
you
to,
wanted
we would
to.
have to amend the current regulation.
Right.
Correct.
Which again, we can do. We can make
Yeah.
a choice to do that.
Want to consider that for the next.
Always recommend, though, you have a public discussion on changes
Okay.
to regulations of any type.
Which, again, if we're, so to that point, looking at the time frame, right? By the time we we amend it, we agree on an amendment, have a public regulation, now we're,
Mid-October.
into October, November. Again, I'm not saying we can't do it,
Yeah, but
because again, it still saves us 4 to
I
6
think
weeks when we.
hopefully we have an audience from at home watching, but
Mhm.
maybe in the future, we just don't talk about how we have one more license available.
Right, yeah.
Being sarcastic, I mean,
Yeah.
let's just hope it goes
So,
away, I guess.
any questions on the current proposed changes? Is
No.
any,
excellent job,
Yeah, right.
Chris.
Really
Great
good.
job.
Yes.
Not to put more work on you, but do you have the application for the tobacco sales? Is that,
It's the same one we have now?
it's the same thing we have now?
Nothing has changed.
Not, so you just, but
That's
it's
what
still,
response is.
but if people are gonna sell, we're not saying that distributors of cigarettes now in a convenience store are gonna be able to sell these products, or is that the case? So, you can't go into a convenience store if you're saying, well, they have a tobacco sales permit and they can also sell these other products, or they can.
They can,
They can.
to patients, to people over the age of 21.
Of 21.
So, we of course would notify all of our current tobacco vendors and
Okay.
put a notification, people, I don't even know how it happens, notification in the paper of we don't put a legal ad in, right?
We wouldn't, per se.
I don't wanna set a precedent. So we would notify them to come because we wanna
So-
educate them on,
We-
these changes.
As of today, we don't know of anyone who's not holding a tobacco license, but they're selling the products, do we in our town?
Did you survey, you were gonna take a peek,
Yeah, I need a list of people.
oh, no, that's fine, I just didn't know if you had,
Yeah.
to be honest with
No,
you,
I
since
mean,
I still don't
I
think
don't
I've been in a
usually go
convenience
into
store. to get
convenience
them to
stores,
sell.
but, yeah.
It's not, I
but
mean, it's
no,
not
I've
right.
seen them
I would
anyways.
like to do
I
that.
kind of keep my eyes open, but.
Right.
I mean, you need to survey only those who are not selling tobacco.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the current draft with the edits to Judy's name in both positions.
I second that gladly.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great job.
So what I'll do is I'll make the changes to Judy's name, I will get the physical documents printed, and I will get, Laura, I will get you a copy of the Word document and a PDF version.
Incidentally, on the application forms that give it, is there any reference to the specific regulation, or it just says Ashland's tobacco license, policies?
For the
Or
tobacco regulation.
on the form, so that needs to be changed if it references to a specific regulation.
Well, references having a tobacco sales license, and that's what the application is, a tobacco.
On the application form, if there is any reference to these regulations, particular to the year attached, so now it's going to be 2020 regulation.
I mean, does it
The
say
ones that
something
approved.
like, I have read and agreed to the terms?
Oh,
of-"
yes,
Well,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
Mark, I'm
that
sorry.
needs to
I'm
be-
sorry, you lost
That's
thinking.
part of the regulation.
Yeah, you have to
Yes,
sign that.
sync it
right.
with the same
Yep,
times
yep,
and years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yep. Just having a thought. I was thinking also, if it's okay, I'm just planning ahead, if it's okay with the board, when we have the public forum, because Chris has done the work, you know, I'll open up the meeting and I'll just hand it over
I'll
to him,
moderate.
because,
I'll
yeah,
moderate.
we'll just let him,
Sure.
you know, just to, I mean, not to be prepared, but
No,
when we do
yeah.
that, we'll just
Yeah.
let him run with it, because he's done all the work with it.
Yeah,
All
as
right.
long as we make it clear when we post for the forum, that the only topics of discussion, and whatever gets released will have the highlights in it, or only the highlighted portions.
Yeah, and what we can, you know, we can do,
Yeah.
when it gets closer, is we'll,
Mhm.
I mean, hopefully we have a turnout, but we'll set some guidelines for the, you know, the meeting, like we usually do for a public discussion.
That's when
Just
we'll
to keep it.
That's when we'll find out if there are other retailers selling the product.
Right, we'll find out then who is selling the product.
Yeah.
Well, which I can't, I mean, yeah, I mean, somebody might come and say, I don't have a tobacco sales license,
Yeah.
you know, and we might,
I think it's gonna be to our benefit to put this forward now, because like I said, if we wait and drag on it, there's gonna be more incentive as time goes on, because once Framingham is selling marijuana out the door, people in our surrounding towns are gonna start selling these products. So,
all right. Any more discussion on the regulations? Oh, good. Thank you, good job.
thanks.
So over to you, Mark. FY20 budget, review and presentation.
You got 10 minutes, buddy.
Oh, listen, I was gonna say,
Five.
okay.
Okay, if I can slow down. Although you need
We'll help
time
you
to
through it,
review
Mark, we'll help you through it.
But you'll see the 2020 budget, it's fairly a new budget, it started July 1st. And we're in good shape, we haven't spent much money, and hopefully, as time goes on, we can always judge where we need to be based on permanent positions. So at 8%, we're at 6.8%, but some of the money that is allocated for contracted services, that is the landfill. And presently, as the board has seen, the past 2 months, we haven't had any issues with any levels above the requirements for the landfill gas and so forth. So that's a good sign, but again, it's seasonal too, so we'll see how it continues. But as a whole, we're in good shape. We'll see what we do with purchase of nursing services. We're not for sure how that will be allocated based on discussions with Framingham and so forth, but the budget's in good shape in that respect.
Mark, if you don't mind, I was kinda jumping around when Jim was here, but with that said, the cost to each community has not been set for the city of Framingham. They know everybody has their budget set for, you know, the coming year, so that's what they're reviewing, right now. The city of Framingham is willing to pay the benefits for the employees who are working there, so I'll just leave it as, we don't know exactly how much it's gonna cost us. We may or may not have allocated enough money, but we'll review it
Okay.
once we know. Sorry, forgot to
what-
mention that earlier.
That's-
Is that under nursing then?
Yes.
Yeah, purchase of nursing
Okay.
services, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, it may be a purchase at that point versus,
Right.
an employee. We'll go from wherever it goes and.
And again, I was very excited about our meeting. And even with that, I kinda mentioned that, they know who Nancy is, who works for us now, and they are potentially gonna see if they can employ the other people who are currently working and fill the positions, cause they will have a full-time position that they'll hire a nurse. and then they're gonna do some education positions and things like that. So they're looking to bring the staff that's currently working potentially on, depending on what their hours would be, you know, so they're gonna try to work with the people who are, you know, in these communities, so that'll be good.
That's that part of it. And then we're now looking at FY21, which is the budget review and preparation. And I've been given some additional guidelines. First and foremost is the nursing services. We're hoping to see that model move forward with the city of Framingham. Gotta use the same
I
city.
know.
And we'll hear more about that. And then as it relates to the rest of the budget, a couple items. One is that I've been in communication with Hudson, because they're this other town that was small that had Narcan for distribution through a grant. Presently, Hudson is looking, if they haven't already budgeted, a small amount of money to purchase Narcan, because the grant Narcan will be expiring as of October. We're trying to see if we can return that and get other vaccine for this year, but next year, I'd like to see a small portion in the budget for Narcan purchase. So that's, or maybe Framingham, and we could distribute it from there too. Since that new concept of their nursing center came up, that might be the other opportunity.
We don't have Narcan left though currently.
Yeah, we do. We have about 5 doses.
Okay, so we
Five
did,
times 2.
I mean, that's good though, we did good
Yeah.
at getting, yeah.
Well, you know, when they first provided the 125 doses per each city and town, Framingham and Natick were the two larger populations. Hudson and Ashland, we had the smaller population, so we agreed to move some of it back to those communities because they had the greater need than the smaller communities. So,
Do you know how many, I mean, I don't know if you have the numbers, if not, you can get back to us, but like how many were residents, how many were, I'll call it in kind, like,
yeah, well, they were basically all residents that we were, well, I can't say that. Ed Berman, who's Sergeant Ed Berman from the police, was very helpful in distribution of Narcan, and he offered the training and then he distributed. And I know Mass Bay here in Ashland, there was some training, so they may not all be Ashland
okay, but they were all residents, okay.
Yeah, some may have been Ashland students, but not residents, so that's why that number might be hard to obtain. But I'll talk to Ed. I can ask Ed if he
Well, what,
has an idea.
what makes me personally nervous is that we didn't budget for it, so I don't know if the
Yeah.
money's there to do it, so I mean, maybe
Well,
maybe it could be a different grant, maybe even, because I know, part of this as well, Mark, there's an organization, again, back to the nursing services, there's an organization who is going to, allocate money for the first year to have a pilot program with this. Is it, what was the name of the company, Metro West Healthcare Foundation?
Oh, the Metro West
Metro West Healthcare Foundation is going to contribute to the regionalization of the nursing services, so that's what I was curious about.
Oh,
Is so they're gonna help also fund it, because again, they know the budget constraints, so maybe we could do something
and
through
actually,
them.
they funded all the Narcan we received, the 500 doses. So, with that said, I think that was the seed money.
Okay, that's it.
And I did request to their director, Marty Cohen, if there was any potential to get additional seed money.
Okay.
Haven't heard back, and Hudson and Ashland are both interested, but,
But they don't expect us to sustain their program, excuse me, that was tough.
well, they did.
Oh, they did?
Any seed money, just like with tobacco control, the regionalization of tobacco control, they gave us the seed money, us being, I think, 11 communities, and they expect that seed money, and you will continue after the money runs
But we didn't
dry.
budget for that,
Well, we were the only one of the very few communities that started a user fee revolving fund, and some of the communities did not, and that's what Metro West Health Foundation was hoping for, is
for
that.
the Narcan?
No, I'm in tobacco now, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, so,
But
but
it's
for
the
that,
same concept.
no, but for the
Anytime they
for the
grant us-
Narcan, I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't, I'm just saying, I'll
Yeah.
specify myself, as I didn't know that we were supposed to sustain that, because I think we would have probably put more money in the budget, right? I mean, because, I mean, we're pretty tight, like, I don't have last year's, but we're pretty tight when it comes down to the
Yeah.
end of the year, we don't have a lot of,
Mhm.
there's not wiggle room in there to, let's say, even $500 worth. I don't know
I
what we're
would
doing
hope
with that.
that we could buy it at a rate where even if we got maybe, say, 5 doses, it might be 200 from the nursing services for now. And the idea came after the budgeting was done from Hudson. And so, if not, then
Right.
we can at least hopefully next year. And that's why I'm saying in FY '21, put it in there, or at least.
So
in
what
the-
was the, I get
Can
nervous
I-
with grants, yeah.
All right. So are you saying in the budget, you gave out some Narcan, and in the budget, you didn't put it in because there's always gonna be there's a continued need, not there's always, hopefully.
The Narcan distribution came from a grant.
Okay, so did we charge people for?
No, no.
Okay,
The
so,
whole intent was to actually start a process of handing out Narcan to people in need.
okay. So, are we going forward going to be doing that? Is this what you're talking about? And how are we gonna fund it?
Well, it won't be as, the opportunity does exist, but we're going to, the problem on Narcan expires the last few doses we have October.
So,
if, that's why a letter was, an email was sent to Marty Cohen from Metro West Health Foundation, just saying, you know, Marty, is there a chance to get additional funds? And he hasn't responded yet, but we were hoping the answer will be yes, just a minimum amount, but
Okay.
we're waiting for that response. If not, then if we do have a demand, maybe through police and Board of Health, looking at an opportunity to have them help, we could.
Maybe there's a
look
different
at
grant or
purchasing.
something.
Yeah.
How much-
Marty, the person who grants, who funds the grant?
How much is the money you're looking
Marty
at?
Cohen is the one that is the
Would-
director of the granting authority.
Okay, and would the public have any influence over him if there were, say, a petition or a letter writing campaign?
I think that always is helpful.
Well,
The reason I say so is I
What-
know, without a doubt, there are people, I know personal people and I have friends who lost their children.
Yeah, it's a
And-
serious
and-
situation.
There are people out there that would do that if we tell them to, if we ask them to.
Well, I agree with you there, but to just back up a couple of steps here, because what concerns me, because I, with my daytime position, I deal with grants, and if we made an obligation to
Right.
have a sustainable program for this,
Mhm.
we need to plan that, and we need to
Okay.
have a plan.
that's
Sure.
what I'm getting
We need
at.
an actual
Yeah.
plan, because, and it was not discussed during last year's budget.
I got you.
We should have
Oh, yeah,
collectively.
moving forward,
Right,
I
We
agree.
should have included.
Things change, so we could
No, I
always
know,
add
but-
on to these things, we can't just go back and say we
But
didn't
if
think about last year,
if
we
we
can't have
signed
it.
up for a grant and we were obligated, or are obligated to continue it, we need to move forward with that, because that was our obligation, and that's what we signed up for.
Sure.
So
that-
we would need to do it.
Yeah,
To
but
apply for a
what-
grant
what's
or to
the-
fund it?
Fund
What is
it.
the short-term
is it?
need in terms?
I don't know. I
How
don't know
about-
what our obligation, I don't know what the grant that we signed with them and what our
Well,
obligation is.
Here's what we need to
Mhm.
know. So,
I guess we need to see the grant.
we need to see the
Mo-
grant, but we also need to know, maybe we need to survey the fire department and police department and ask
What's
how
the
many
right
over the
amount to
course
have?
of a year, what's the need in our town?
Well, we did, for a while, we did struggle getting rid of the 125 doses.
Yeah, we had.
Yeah. We did struggle for it. Obviously, we were able to get rid of them, which was great. But I just think that if we sign up for something, I think we should.
Yeah, let me ask this question again, either Mark or Diane, you probably know that. What is the now request that you put it for funding? How much are you looking
Well,
for?
This is my idea, because I was in discussion with Hudson about what they were planning to do. Just so you know, Marty Cohen back in June was asked if the continuation of the grant could occur, and he hasn't answered back one way or the other.
Right, but
so- but
how much
what
money
we
are you
have
looking
is-
for now for the
Well,
short term?
They're usually $40 for 2 doses,
So-
2 mass, if you buy it in mass quantity.
Okay,
So you figure, I would think we should be fine between 5 to 10 packets of 2 doses
so that's about
each per
$200
year.
$200?
$200 to $400.
200 to
Okay,
400.
I
No, I
know where you're
understand.
going. Can-
I
I
understand.
want.
I'm
if
just
we
only the
can-
number.
If we can table this discussion to the next meeting for 2
Sure, we
reasons.
can.
I would like us to see what the grant is, because I wanna see what our obligation is, because that
Right.
goes very far with me. And let's see if we can get an answer about the grant.
Okay,
because
and
I don't wanna
then-
get ahead of ourselves.
Subsequent of that, every year that you anticipate how much to spend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying it's, we're talking about
You're
budget
right.
presentation right now.
We gotta-
So this is just ideas I'm bringing up, it's not solidified, it's.
I mean, I understand,
No, I
but
know,
then
if
just give me a
we-
number.
If we have a grant, again, this is where my daytime
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
When we have a grant and we sign an application and we're saying to them, this is seed money for X, but we will take it over after a year, let's say, explain my
Correct.
scenario.
So what-
We're obligated to hold our end of the
So
bargain.
how much were we allocating for the budget that in the future that if you want to, say,
I would
$1,000
say-
bucks or 500 or
I would
200?
say maybe 300 to
Yeah.
400.
Okay, so Laura, if you could just put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and we'll mark it, and
Let-
and we'll kind of
Ask
do,
Marty if
Right,
there's any
let-
update. We may
let-
not
okay.
need to
But
propose it.
if it doesn't come in time that you need it, and if you do need to buy it,
Yeah.
I'm willing to open up.
I
Me-
knew I
me-
might hear that.
Me
well,
too.
we have a discussion further on in the meeting, so
yeah.
hold
I
on,
understand.
because-
Right.
I agree.
That's-
So
I'll
if you
help-
could just get
I'll
us the
help
grant, see what
KG
our
out
obligation
with
is, then we
that,
can
for sure.
kind of take it from there. All right.
Because we don't have to brain over,
Yeah.
Storm
Just so
this thing for
everyone knows,
200, 300
Fran-
bucks, we shouldn't be
Yeah.
struggling hard, and you may as well
Right.
spend that time for something else,
You're right.
more effective, more valued.
Right.
How
For
the
the
grant
few hundred
started
bucks.
was Framingham
I understand.
went
If,
in
if,
for all four
if everything
towns.
fails and you need it soon,
Right. Just
just give us a
We-
bus.
Thank
Yeah,
We must have a
exactly.
copy.
Just give us a
right?
bus.
Framingham does. We've
Yeah,
just
so-
given- Framingham did all the groundwork, and they had a fiscal agent, they actually, and that's why I think Marty's saying he's working with Framingham for seed money to see if there's additional funds. So we'll see where they're at. I asked
but-
Marty the update, but.
Look at what you have.
Yep.
If tomorrow you need it, just
Okay.
give us a buzz if you don't get it, that's all.
Thank you. Very
But
nice.
we don't want to stop this, we want to keep doing what we have.
That's right, thank you, thank you. And then, as it relates to the rest of the budget, everything would stay pretty much within the lines you see. Outside of, what we've talked about is looking at a part-time or full-time health agent to do the 24 to 30 hours a week of food inspections, which would also entail one of my goals, and that's to try to get one more inspection at priority facilities. It's very difficult with the system we have. So priority facilities are restaurants, large grocery stores, nursing or rest homes. Those are the priority schools where you have a vulnerable population. So that's why I would like to see an increase in the hours of food inspections. And KJ, you brought out a good point too, and we possibly could be doing it during the same time as to be checking their grease log traps more. You know, there's only so much time if you're trying to get your work done within a certain time presentation. Tom's doing a great job,
Yeah.
but he's limited in the hours because he's a full-time employee somewhere else. He can't dedicate 40 hours. a
Right,
week.
but
So you
some-
look,
sometimes when you cut short the time on the inspection, you lose some of the important
You
things
can't
or
do it.
viable things that you need to check.
And we'll be talking about choke saver, those could be checked at a better
Definitely,
rate.
definitely.
so
And
do we
Right.
have the money in the revolving account, the food
we
establishment?
have 22,000, that wouldn't handle a full-time position,
This,
but that
So,
would be, we could
this
raise.
is this is the amount?
Yeah,
The one that you, that Laura's put a spreadsheet
Yeah,
on.
well, you should, everyone should have
That's
that.
what
They
the
have,
rep-
we have it. That's the number that we have.
Yes.
But every year we keep wiping out completely, is that right? Whatever we put, we take out?
Yeah. And so, well, no, I don't think we have.
So there must be
The-
something
the
left
amount
over.
Tom has used is probably less than that, because that account has a greater amount in it.
So do we know that, how much money
So-
that is
Yeah,
there?
we do. That's, in your budget, in this, second page. Yeah. This doesn't show.
All right, so
what's used.
just,
Yeah.
again, to back up a little bit, I'm very simple-minded,
Sure.
especially when it gets,
Just get
when my
this.
blood
This is
pressure gets
close
up.
enough.
So 24 to 30 hours of a food inspector, how much is that annually?
How much you paying?
I don't know. That's what
I'm
saying.
assuming that the,
Wait, because this
the
isn't a
13
budgetary issue.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
supposed to be talking about the budget, this is not,
Right.
this is a budgetary issue for
Yeah.
fees.
correct.
This
I'm assuming the 1350 corresponds to a month, is that right? Which you show on the second page, or is that for 2 months?
That's not, that's for food.
Yeah, that's spent out for the food
How much does the
inspection.
food inspector make per hour?
Well, that's this
That's
year,
for-
but
yeah,
I'm
that's-
going
you're
to
right, KJ.
Last year's budget, we spent $23,330.
Okay, that's
And
what I'm
that's
looking
10
at,
hours a
12
week.
times that would be approximately this, that's why I was
It's
just
35,
multiplying it.
37
Yeah.
an hour. So you'd divide 37 into the 23,330, and you get your hours. And then what I was going to propose is that within that.
So,
Go-
we're
I'm
looking,
sorry,
no,
let me
let's
slow
just,
down. This
yeah,
is
I know,
24.
so,
It's 24
we're looking
hours.
at 24 hours, thank you, at 24 hours a week, at
37
$37, we're looking at $46,000. So the reason why I was like, okay, let's just simplify it, because this is a fee-based program. So this, same thing, we have to review our fees to determine if we can afford an
Correct.
increase. Obviously, there's a certain percentage we should increase each year.
That's why I was suggesting
So-
to start up a new item as the grease trap, because we have been waiving them, and we have,
Well, and there's
we're
things
also
that-
looking at, so this costs some paperwork, he has to draw up and do
KJ,
things.
you're absolutely right, just like we were doing with the nursing services, we need to sit down as a board and say, this is what we would like to do with our increased food inspection program, add this, add that, change things, so we can justify increase in fee and let people know what they're getting for their money.
Yeah, this is a great job, Laura, what you did.
Yeah.
I see there's one item, the re-inspection fee, that we did not collect any, or nobody was fined for that. We did a lot of re-inspections last year.
You did?
We did. Restroom itself,
Thank you. What is it?
restroom,
I'm
we
sorry.
did quite a bit.
It's 24 hours, that's 30.
Not the first
57,
re-inspection, it's the second, but there were second re-inspections, and
Right.
I have talked with Tom, I think it's again tracking and time, but you're right, we're missing out on that fee. What would it be? I would say it probably would be every, if you look at his reports, he doesn't always have to do a second re-inspection, but he does have to do it with
So
some.
we charge for re-inspection every time, and is there a
It should
fixed
be
amount for it, or is that
It's
something?
$50.
Then we should go back and then bill them if we
Not for
can.
re-inspection fee, it doesn't. The fine goes to the town clerk, not the,
Then there's the fines that go to the town clerk, so there's more money that
Yeah,
we're collecting.
yeah, and the
or
fines,
could be
the
collected.
fines, this figure, actually, we probably shouldn't include the fines in here, because we don't see that doesn't go to your
Yeah.
revolving. I asked the question, it's not a statement. I assume that doesn't go into the revolving, the fines?
It goes to the clerk, and I don't know if she puts it back in.
I think non-criminal does not allow that, I think it has to go to general fund. Just
but-
future
I think-
reference,
I
I think we
think-
just need to just not put
Believe-
fines on it, I'll look into it.
That
for you
could,
tomorrow.
that could be used
it's
as
okay.
an
It's not-
item to get more money from the general fund for the budget.
Well, I think it's time for us to review our fees and look at the program, and I think we'll know.
Right.
And again, I think that's another thing, we should have a meeting or time, a good amount of time to sit and talk about the food establishment program.
Right, but
Because
let
this-
me reiterate that the state does give back meals tax to the towns. And that income for the town is
Have you-
much more than the budget that we have for the Board of Health. If you have a good Board of Health inspection program, you have good restaurants, and more people will come, more money comes to it. So we need to insist on the town manager to spend that part of it a little bit here, extra
Oh,
for us.
thank God we're televised, KG.
He
All right,
has-
moving
he has heard
along.
this 10 times, I'm going to keep saying that.
Moving along.
Well,
I think we should go to town meeting with that.
Yeah, how many, that's what I was gonna say, how many
Yeah.
people go to town meeting and go, that meals tax, I want a little bit of that?
But
much
it
is
should- that would be, this would
We have,
be great.
we have a revolving account, we
And
can't
it
take,
goes to
we
the
can't take from the general fund and put it in a revolving
have-
account, that
no, no,
defeats
it
the
So where
doesn't
does
purpose.
have
meals tax
to.
go when it comes back into the general?
Yes, the meals tax does, but it's allocated
Can't
out.
some of it be earmarked towards Board of Health?
I think we looked into this before, you cannot take general fund money and deposit it into a revolving
No,
account.
let them not revolve, put it in the general fund, but they can put it in other funds.
There's already been a suggestion by a resident to use it to help fund the public safety building.
Moving along,
Yep,
all right,
okay.
go ahead.
Question is, are
So
we
we-
supposed to only draw
We're on
from
the
the
right
general,
track.
Alright.
the
I'm going to.
Yeah, let's
revolving
move
fund
on.
for the food?
So the
Alright,
food,
table.
the food
I would-
inspector will
I would
have
think
to sit
24
down.
to 30 hours, and education would also be part of it,
Mhm.
trying to do more educational capabilities such as we did in the past, where we go over a list of all the violations we see through a year, and then discuss that with the vendors, the restaurants, so
We
there's a lot of
should-
education would be part of it too.
Right, we
Yeah.
should have a time set aside that we talk about food and fees,
Yeah.
because then we can put,
Yeah.
kind of back into the fees and figure out where we're at.
So,
Because
and-
it would have to be, let's see, the renewals go out November first.
Yeah.
So maybe at the next meeting, we could set aside a little bit of time to talk about the program as well as the fee schedule.
Okay.
And maybe if you can get like an average what the fees normally go up for other communities, so we know, just kind of a baseline. Because I think that we can back into a program that way. So, I assume though, because we're talking about regionalizing nursing services, we would look at adding a full-time, assistant health director, assistant
Director,
position,
yeah.
for the 21 budget. So that's what we have to work on.
Exactly, this is all, we're talking
Okay,
about FY
yeah, I just,
21 here.
yeah.
Down the
Exactly.
line, somewhere.
Well, I think
And-
that's, I think, a little bit more work than doing the food program. I
But
think.
we're already in advance of the directions we're gonna be given by management on our budget, so that's why I'm just laying this on the table for discussion only. It's not like that's what it has to be,
Right,
it's up to
right.
the board,
Well, and I
you know, I
think
just
they
wanna
said
give you.
September is when, right, to start the process with
Yeah.
management, right? So
Yes.
maybe we
I
kind of
talked
feel
to-
them out with that.
yeah,
I don't,
talked to Jen today about that.
oh, good.
Usually Brittany will come out at the end of September with the directions from management on our filing of our budget. But again, we've tried over the past few years to get a full-time assistant health agent. Maybe this time it might work, cause last year we asked for 2 positions, full-time public health nurse, full-time public health agent, so. our
You asked for 2 positions.
well,
We asked for 1, you asked for 2.
I saw the need,
No, I'm just saying, I'm just,
I saw the need.
what are we
I
saying,
put
for
it
full
in.
disclaimer?
And again,
Disclosure, excuse me?
I don't think it hurt anything. If anything, it opened eyes.
I would
And
like
we're
you
going to
on-
Framingham.
Right, I was gonna say, cause I know Michael Herbert expressed the same thing about possibly, he's had communication with Framingham about regionalizing
Yeah.
the same services, so we need, we need to maybe have that as Plan B, but we would have to be prepared to move forward with the budget for next year for that position.
Hopefully, we'll have those answers by the time budget has to
Yeah.
be, the budget has to be submitted.
Right.
So that would be good. But that would be generally what I'm asking for is a full-time assistant health agent and basically look at the Narcan part
Okay,
if
yeah.
we're not granted. And that's my presentation to the board, but this is your budget as well, so your ideas are more, as important as what I'm presenting to the board.
I also would like to see more of these food inspections done on the weekend. That's when the population goes to these restaurants.
A lot
So
of our
if you can
inspections-
do a good inspection during peak hours,
Yeah.
then you know that it's good for other times.
Right.
So that's when you need, I think Framingham does a good job in doing that during the weekends rather than weekdays and all
And
that.
we're here.
So
because
we should,
have
we
all
should
the-
be able to do that because.
Well, and I think, we are,
Temporary
with,
ones.
our current inspector is wonderful, but he is limited on how many hours, so, in the
No,
future.
he doesn't work on both weekends. He works on, I think, one of the days, Saturdays or something. I don't think he works
Yes, he
on
doesn't
Sunday.
work on Sundays.
Sunday. So like that, you're losing half the peak. Because Friday, Saturday, Sunday are the times when the restaurants are busy. And if you can inspect at the time, there are a lot of people. So if it's in good condition at that time, it's good condition all
And
of the
refresh
time.
my memory,
Friday
what's the
and
cost of a full-time
Friday,
position?
Saturday, Sunday too.
80,000?
I would say 80 to
Lazy
90,
people.
and that's with benefits.
Lazy people go to the
You
restaurant.
might be able to
That
advertise
includes
it-
benefits?
That includes
Lunch.
benefits. You might be able to advertise it for 60,000, 60 to 65, but with benefits, it'd be about 90,000. Easy money, right?
Very easy.
Meal
When,
Well, I'm
when the
thinking-
town, when the town gets $250,000 in the meals tax, which
So
is
there we go.
a lot more than
All
the.
we're asking for is a third of that. Oh, that's burning in here right now.
How?
So I think what we
I'm
should
sure-
do also at our next meeting is we should, same thing, we should set aside some time to talk about the budget, talk about this position. Maybe we'll see if we can get a direction from Michael Herbert on if or
Mhm.
how things are going with, I don't want us to move forward with trying to get an $80,000 position and have him doing the same thing.
Right.
So maybe we can get some
Makes
direction
sense.
for that
And
before.
and those
Maybe Mark and I can have a
instructions
meeting
will
with them and
go.
just feel them out and see how,
Yeah.
Makes sense.
right.
So, that was easy.
That was easy.
Not done yet.
Just-
You still have one more item, Mark?
Let me, put this aside, my
Yeah.
brain
The
pool.
you talk
And
about
a
the
lot
chokes.
of our, just so the board knows, a lot of our, my discussion today with our assistant town manager was the 10 essentials of public health and how to form my goals around some of that in education, priority inspections of food facilities, kind of built around what I'm talking with you, or what I'm explaining to you now, so it's
Okay.
built around some of those.
Send those papers by electronic means.
The 10 essentials? Yeah, I have it electronically, I can do that.
Yeah, that'd be good,
Let
yeah.
me, 10 essentials, I can easily do that, I just had it
Okay.
on the web, it's this CDC document. Choke saver certification update. Basically, Laura was gonna go over this, but she said she's too busy typing over here, so.
She's done a good job, and
Oh, no, you can,
and also
no, this is you've been working really hard on this. Why don't you could take,
Well, Tom and I worked together on it.
Yeah.
and,
Well,
She's gonna kill me tomorrow.
go ahead, Laura. You
You're
can,
doing a good job.
you did.
excellent job.
So between Tom and I, we went through the list of restaurants that are.
Put the microphone up there for yourself. Mark has two of them.
Really got her
Borrow
on
one from Mark. Mark has two of them.
There you go.
So Tom and I went through the list of restaurants that are 25 seats or more, and we came up with this list. And we sent out KG's, had developed an application that we sent out, which is the addendum, which the restaurants with over 25 would need to complete by filling in the number of operating hours that they're open and the number of employees that are certified in choke saver training. And so you'd like them to have, obviously, more hours of trained staff than they are hours of operation. And the majority of them do. There's a few that have been a little more difficult to get them to respond.
Some are enrolled, as you can see.
Yep.
too.
That's good.
This
So-
kind of pushed them to the point where they need to be.
Good.
Right, Laura?
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
so
that's great.
that's, yeah, so we're getting there, and,
Well, it's also the first run with the form, so I think, as we do it, I'm assuming we're doing it annually now. We'll use this as an annual form.
yeah.
You're
we'll
right.
get this,
Okay,
yeah.
so I think hopefully we'll notice it
Yeah,
improving without having to hound.
yeah, but it at least helped us to
Minutes right now.
recognize there was an issue here, which we
Yeah.
were not knowing. We were just checking choke saver certificate,
Yeah,
yes, but
yeah.
not the number of
No,
hours.
but this is good. This
Yeah.
is,
This tells
good
us the number of
report.
hours, so that we confidently tell all
Yeah.
people who go there, there is a choke saver person
Yeah,
available for you.
absolutely.
That's,
Great, so
that's
Tom
Thank
will
you for-
have this. and
thank you for doing the
happy to be able to
research.
use it.
yeah, then
that's great.
maybe you should call those people who are falling short and then
That's the
tell
plan
them they
for
need to
Tom
line up
to
soon.
follow up,
Way
yeah.
to get KG to
I've-
come out there.
You wanna volunteer? You can come in and make some calls, KG. Yeah, thank you, Laura.
Well, there is no penalty for these things, right? Or what do you
No,
do?
there's no-
Informs, good report, and thanked for.
You could
the
pull the permit
research
out.
and move forward.
Only gonna
But
force
there's
them
no,
to
he's,
swallow a
KG,
teaspoon
there's
of
no
cinnamon.
violation,
Yeah,
you
right.
notice,
Used to
there's
do.
Oh,
no
you can-
fine or anything for.
They
not
can lose their
having
permit.
choke saver.
That's up to the board, you could call them in for a hearing, and that's a possibility if
Yeah.
you wish.
So that,
Well, I had mentioned a couple months ago, the fire department offers CPR and first aid classes free to for the public. They fill up very quickly. I personally sign up 3 months in advance.
I think maybe that
Um,
we should
But
probably.
this might be, I was mentioning, I said maybe we should see if we can get a BAA grant and maybe have the same organization do one for our, or one, or
Correct.
maybe multiple for our food establishments to work on completing the
Right.
form.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be for the public, but, for anybody from the public, but
It's a nice show of faith,
absolutely,
good faith.
right. So we can
Definitely. I
put
think
it
that
on a
would-
future agenda.
Please, please,
Hey,
get that.
Beautiful report,
really good, yeah.
clear, love it.
Long,
All the better, all the time.
Oh, okay. So, me now? I'm looking at you, I'm like, am I next? So, KG, I wanted to publicly talk about a donation that you made. Well, no, but this is serious business because you made a donation, and we purchased a freezer, which because of the efforts with the city of Framingham, we no longer need the freezer. We did return it. Your donation was wonderful, but, the donation, we should return your donation to you.
No, I don't need it, but it can be used for any other purpose that the board wishes now to decide or later to decide, that's fine.
Well, you don't have to decide right now as well how to reallocate the donation. The donation's been accepted,
you-
we've cashed your check. But, if we find that there's a need and you wish to use those funds for that,
Well, I have to take the check?
you don't have to take the check, but the donation was specifically for a freezer.
Oh, I,
So,
so
So
can
it's
I
gonna
make
sit
a
in the
motion to
funds.
amend it?
no, absolutely, I'm, this,
Reallocate it.
yeah, no, but
Yes.
you absolutely can, if you have a purpose for it as we speak now. If not, we can put it on the agenda next meeting.
Correct.
But technically, we should reallocate it, cause we are not using that item.
That's
So-
fine.
So you
That's
wanna
fine.
just leave it on the table for a night now and
And
put
then,
it,
yeah, if you want to reallocate it now, if it's admissible now, then we can do that.
do you have a something.
I don't have any, but whatever
Okay.
that we
Well-
need, even Narcan that we need it,
If you want, we can put it on the next agenda again, because Mark's gonna get some
I
information,
mean,
and
there
maybe
is
we
a short,
can,
is there a short-term need for something else?
we can discuss it. That's fine. We don't have that information yet to know how much we need, but,
Okay.
so why don't we put it on the next
Yeah,
agenda?
but put it
feel like I
there in
said
the
that
bin
forever.
there, and then put it in the bucket, and then
That's
take it out
fine.
when we need it.
That's fine.
Well, thank you.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, KG. All right, so we did, Mark, you did the FY 20 and 21 updates.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I kinda
Okay.
combined them.
Stop the bleed?
Stop the Bleed is hopefully going to happen soon. We have both the fire chief and Sergeant Berman working with a nurse from Woburn, who did the training that I took. The reason we have Sergeant Berman and Chief Key working on this is the fact that
Chief Roby.
Chief Roby, I said Key, didn't
You
I?
did.
My God, Chief Roby.
Sorry.
A long past thought there, sorry Keith. But Chief Roby is because they have the medical people. The person that trains the trainer has to be a medical person. Framingham, Kitty Mahoney, who's a public health nurse over in Framingham, could be ours someday too. She is willing to have some of her medical people do the training here so that Karen, I can't think of her last name, DeCamp, I think, she's the nurse that offered this to me, won't have to travel this far. So it's a work in action. It's just a matter of logistics right now. And we'll probably have several trainers in Ashland who can train others. And then after that, Jen Ball and I spoke about, hopefully once we have enough trained people, we can put up the kits we have. We have kits you can put up on walls that have the tourniquet and so forth. So it's
And
moving
this is
along.
specific for public buildings, not for residents,
It's for
right?
public buildings.
Okay.
It was through
be
a
for
grant
business?
that I
Oh,
received,
is
but
it
not a
for-
business.
okay.
Public buildings.
Okay.
So that's that, and it's moving along, and I thank the fire chief as well as Ed Berman on, the sergeant from the police on helping us on that.
Awesome. All right, everybody, the next agenda item is July 16th minutes. Did everybody get a chance to review those?
I did.
Anybody have any changes or anything that needs to be discussed?
I move to accept them as submitted.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those are accepted. And everybody has a calendar. We'll just talk about the next.
I got the dates over here, Diane.
I just have to grab my calendar. So, KG brought to my attention, that he's not gonna be available on Tuesdays.
That's not confirmed yet. I'm waiting for thing, that's why
Okay, so,
if you want to just talk about now to September, and then beyond that we can talk in September.
okay, so you'll know by the 27th, though, that's our next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will.
Okay,
So
so
that-
anyhow, there's a potential of KG not being available from September,
Tuesday.
December, but for right now, we have a regular meeting scheduled for the 27th
Oh.
of August.
Okay.
Is that
I was
still
under the
correct?
impression that we were not, that
We-
we were only meeting once in August, I thought.
Yeah, that's
And it
what I
could be my
thought.
error, that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna say, okay?
Yeah, no, I
9/3
only had
is the
one
one I
meeting.
Okay,
Yep.
that's great. I will,
So, but then we go back to our, if you wish, to the first and
Right.
third, which is only the week after, the third
Right.
of September.
so KG, do you know if you'll be able to attend that meeting in September?
September what
Third.
date?
3rd? So, okay.
Third should be all right.
Okay. So we'll just plan the Tuesdays, and then if it has to, I was just,
Correct.
because I was gonna say that for the second meeting, we should plan the
Yeah.
public
The
forum.
should be the second meeting.
So, I guess we should probably wait till the
And
27th
the
to do
board
that.
vote should be the
Right.
following meeting.
Right, yeah. So why don't we just say, the next
Well,
meeting
we
is
can say
September
tentatively.
3rd,
Yeah.
3rd, and then we'll, that won't
Plan
give
for the
enough
public
time for the public forum.
On the
That won't-
17th. Is that right?
That's only 2 weeks. Do you think that's enough?
I think so. We can get the notices out the next day.
Okay.
We
All right,
have
if everybody's comfortable with that,
we have
that's fine.
email lists
Okay.
to our tobacco vendors, so
Yeah,
we could
it's,
do
I
that
think
the
it was
next day.
17th or 18th, right? So-
Okay. Okay, so the 3rd, and again, 6 PM has been okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we putting down the 17th too? Or no, not yet?
Right.
We're not sure yet. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm
But I
gonna
mean,
put that
KG,
on.
will you find,
Because currently that I'm going to be teaching additional courses in Simmons, which probably is going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Oh, okay.
So that's when, but
Mm.
driving from there to here, leaving at 6 o'clock,
Is not.
I won't be able to make it at 6 here. And it has to be at least an hour and a half based on the traffic, so I don't want to upset the board structure.
Well, is it
That's
too
why
much
I
if
was
we
wondering
change,
whether-
is it too much if we change the time on the Tuesdays? Like if we did 6:30?
I don't know whether I can make it half an
Okay.
hour from.
I don't know, I just am trying to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Simmons
I mean,
to here, half an hour may be
seven.
difficult.
I would rather
7
go
is
back to
possible.
7 if we have to on the same day than change our day.
It
I'm-
might be
I'm with you.
downtown,
That's- yeah.
I'm okay with 7 too. I'm sorry, I know it's easy.
We have to go back to 7 on the Tuesday.
Right.
Maybe it's only
KG,
for
would
a
it be,
semester.
would it be easier just to say we'll keep the same schedule and we'll go back to 7 PM?
Possibly, yes, we can
Okay.
try that. If I'm delayed 5-10 minutes or 15 minutes, you can begin and then I can join,
Alright, so why don't we,
as long as you don't need brain for that purpose.
Why don't we at least get through the forum
Right.
and the board vote for Tuesdays, and we'll make those meetings start at 7.
okay, so the 3rd will start at 7?
3rd is fine.
Oh, the 3rd is fine at
Third's
6,
fine,
so,
we
okay,
can do
okay. So after that, we'll, okay, sounds good to me.
So the
Okay.
3rd will be at 6 and the 17th will be at 7.
Right.
Alright, anybody have anything else?
Were there other, do you wanna have topics for the next agenda? No?
I threw everything on the next agenda.
You had this, I don't know.
Pretty much repeating this meeting.
I'm like, I kept putting it,
Some of them we already.
Oh, incidentally, the Eversource hearing is going to be on the 26th of August. It got postponed from yesterday, but in Concom,
okay, yep.
to the 26th. And there were a couple of people who were wanting to talk about the natural gas and the health issues. Someday we could get them about 10-15 minutes.
I called, just for the record, I called to that gentleman because I felt that, we were getting inundated from his request. I don't feel that, it's the appropriate time right now for us to be discussing something like that publicly.
Mhm.
I think it's going to, I just don't think it's appropriate. He was sending numerous emails, I just explained to Mark, I called him, because the board talked about it last month
Mhm.
and said that we would not entertain the discussion, so I let him know, it was a board decision not to, I mean,
That's
it's-
fine.
okay, so, until further notice, I don't think we
Sure.
should entertain any type
Okay.
of discussion on that. I don't think it's our place, and I don't think it's,
All right. That's good.
so
As
Mark,
long as he knows about it, that's fine.
I did call him to let him know, so we just, I just wanted to make sure he understood. Mark was just pointing out some future topic, items that we had pending, and I think we covered most of them, except for, he has down, and it's probably my memory, but it's hemp and CBD policy received from town council. We gonna adopt something? I'm not too sure about that. I remember receiving it from Lisa, but,
And then the state also sent out a directive, and Lisa reiterated what the Department of Public Health had said, so it's a state law, there's no way we can change it. So
okay, so we don't have to, like
You
this,
don't have to,
okay.
it's just. we
Maybe you
need
could
to-
mention that during the meeting so that everybody knows that it's a state law.
I think I
You
sent
can,
it to the
if you're
board.
fluent on it,
Yeah.
that's great.
I might have sent if you want, I can send that policy out if I hadn't already, but I
Yeah,
can
you
resend
sent it to us, I just didn't know if we had, it's on there as a
Yeah.
topic of it, I don't think we have to take
Yeah,
any
I
further
don't-
action
I
on it,
don't
right?
think there's any
Okay.
action.
Right.
We're not policing it, we're not regulating it, it's a state thing, so
Right. Whew. All right.
Yeah, state took care of that
we'll
one.
leave that to Alfano.
Wasn't there an email about food and the CBD oil, all that stuff?
That's from, yeah, that was from town council, yeah. But it was about a ruling.
Yeah, it was about the ruling that the
Yeah.
Department of Public Health made about hemp versus CBD.
Okay.
One being a drug, the other one not. So one can be added to food, the other one can't. Hemp can be added to food, CBD cannot because it's medicine, according to DPH.
And I just want, with, you had written on a potential future agenda, I don't wanna butcher Lisa's last name, so however you say, how do you say her
Lisa
name?
Yu, we call her Lisa Yu.
Lisa Yu, okay, Lisa Yu. You know, I mean, I think November's gonna come up quick, so I would really like her input so she can give us just a little bit more direction, because I know we had a good talk last time, and she said, you got a lot of work to do to prove the story. So I wanna really exactly see what that means, so that we have a good presentation for this year have a better shot at getting more
Well, and that's
help.
why I was meant, I think I said it out loud, but I said to Mark about maybe if Mark and I sat down with Michael Herbert to talk to him, because
you-
the story needs to be told to him,
Right.
for the budget. So that's the process, so.
Okay, great.
So
All right.
we'll
Well,
talk to
then
him
you're
and
going
find
right.
out, just find out from him for the next meeting is, how's it going with the city of Framingham with regionalizing, and make sure he knows what the board's intention is. And then
Okay,
we'll-
great.
we can let him know that Lisa, you had offered her assistance in helping us write the story.
Great.
And I agree, she was,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
eager to help.
Yeah, great.
So at this present, don't invite Lisa presently into
No,
the-
you and I can just sit down and have a quick conversation with Michael and just make sure he's on the same, I mean, he might be sold, I mean, if, it might, I don't know. I don't want us to do a lot of work like we did last year, and I'd rather just find out from him. I mean, if he's sold already,
Right.
It's frustrating, yeah.
well, if he's sold already, I just wanna see where we're at with
That makes
Yeah.
perfect
the
sense.
story.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
And-
We might be at the
That's
end, we
good.
might at the
Yeah,
beginning,
that's
yeah,
great.
so. Awesome. Right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.